I'm also letting people in to this. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nika Hector, and so
Nika,
welcome.
hold on a second. You need to turn on your closed caption for the screen share for Google.
Okay, let me see. How do I close caption?
Hold on, let me turn it on.
It says copy.
We'll fix this when we send it out, everyone.
So it should be copy the API token.
Okay, press present, and then you'll see a closed caption, a CC.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop sharing. And then.
Sorry, everyone. I totally forgot to remind everyone to do this.
Okay, when I click, I see closed caption at the bottom. And so it's giving me copy the API token or assign a participant to type, or I will type. I'm clueless.
1 second.
I'm gonna stop recording.
And I take it you will handle the waiting room. Are you still able to see that even when I'm co-host and such?
Yeah, I've been letting people in.
Okay, great. All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen and I will get the caption started.
And also, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please leave them in the chat. I think Ashraf, I'm sorry. You see the, does he need to do closed caption on his side too?
Yes, I'll do it.
Okay.
Here, right there. Okay. Hello, everyone. I went ahead and opened the presentation a little prematurely, only to enable the closed captioning. I wanted to say hello. My name is Ashraf. Surprisingly, it was actually spelled correctly by the captioning. Thank you, Google. I'm the lead instructor at Debug Academy. Today we are going to be going over HTML and CSS. This is taken directly out of our HTML and CSS ramp-up course. Now, in the real course, this would be hands-on and it would span 4 days, I should say 4 90-minute sessions. But for today, it will be hands-off and I will be presenting and I will also do some of the hands-on work myself. Let's see, I am a Drupal developer. I worked at Acquia for a while, and I worked there as an architect. And for the moment, my team and I are focused on teaching Drupal-related technologies, as well as consulting and working as added capacity for any of your projects. So if you need training or architectural guidance, or if you even need an additional team member for a while, a developer for a while, one of our team members based out of the Washington, D.C. area could help you out. In that case, please feel free to get in touch through my website, debugacademy.com. With that said, let's jump into today's topic. We're going to start talking about HTML first. When writing HTML, you need a text editor. And when I say a text editor, I'm not talking about Microsoft Word. You want one that is essentially code-friendly. The most popular one these days is called Visual Studio Code, also VS Code. It's free and it's great. I recommend it. You can also use it for JavaScript and PHP. You would also need a web browser. So that would be, let me actually get my webcam on. There we go. Hello, everyone. You will also need a web browser. So that would be something like Google Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge, Safari. You take your pick. They all work. The great thing about HTML and CSS is they are interpreted by the browser. So you don't need anything else. And we'll see what that looks like today. So what is HTML? HTML is basically a set of instructions for the web browser, so for Firefox or Chrome, that tell it what to display. Almost every single website you go to, the one exception might be Flash websites, and those are going out of style, but almost every single website you go to displays its content using HTML. HTML is considered as a relatively simple programming language, and it's tempting to use it for styling your content, but really you should not. You should only use it for structuring your content and for communicating information to the end user and to the browser. HTML is considered a markup language. So it's not enough to say that HTML allows you to display content on the screen. It goes a bit further than that. It adds some semantic context to the content. So if HTML simply displayed content, this is what it might look like, right? You might see this paragraph here, what looks like a paragraph really. You might see all of the text sort of just following one line after the next. But HTML is a bit better than that. And this is really where accessibility also comes into play. In HTML, we can, rather than just displaying content, we can actually describe the content. We can say, A Tale of Two Cities, this is the heading for the content. Book the First recalled to life. We could say this is the first chapter's title, the title of the first chapter. After that, you might have the first line in the chapter and then a paragraph in the chapter. So instead of just putting a bunch of words, you can actually define what semantically the words represent. And by giving that semantic information, your browser will display it not as one big sentence, but as content with hierarchy and meaning. Now, this is very important, and this is almost the most important thing you need to know when you're writing your HTML. You need to realize, I could create an HTML document and I could just call everything a paragraph and write it top to bottom, and it'll be fine for me. But that's not really good enough. That's not professional. It's not considerate. You should really be using semantically correct elements in your content. Not only does it benefit people who are visiting your website with screen readers, because the screen reader will essentially categorize each of the different lines, and it might say A Tale of Two Cities, and it will give you the ability, it'll give your visitor the ability to navigate within sections, navigate out of sections, traverse lists, and so on. If you don't give that semantic meaning to your content, then a screen reader will just sort of fall through the content, read it sequentially, and not have any ability to navigate in a reasonable way. So it doesn't only impact screen readers, it also impacts search engines. And in the future, I would expect it will impact devices, voice-controlled devices like Alexa. So for a device like Alexa or a search engine, they also will want to traverse your page's content and understand what part of the page is the header, what's the footer, what's the title, how many sections are there, and so on and so forth. And if you provide that information by writing semantically correct HTML, your search engine ranking will be better, and even the display of your website in search results will also be better. HTML, I'll say HTML5. HTML5 really is HTML with additional elements. So if you're familiar with HTML and you're not familiar with HTML5, look at it like the old HTML I knew, for the most part, is the same, but there are additional tags for me to use and consider. Now, when writing HTML, for the most part, you are writing an HTML tag, and it consists of an opening tag and a closing tag. You put the name of the tag in these brackets, and you put whatever content is appropriate in between the opening and closing tag. And for the closing tag, you begin with a slash. This applies to 95% of the HTML you're going to write. It almost always has an opening tag and a closing tag, as well as some content in between. For a real example, you can see a paragraph, an example of a paragraph here. So this shows a paragraph tag, opening and closing, and in between it shows the content for the paragraph. Not only can you write HTML elements, you can also provide additional information to the elements in the form of what are called attributes. HTML and HTML5 support attributes. So in this example, we have the A, or anchor element, and the anchor element is what we use to display links. But if you think about links on a website, it typically has at least two pieces of information associated with every link. One piece of information is the destination. So when I click a link, where does it take me to? The second piece of information is the text for the link. What words are displayed? And for me to create a link, I need to provide both of those pieces of information. The way I can do that is through attributes. In this example, you can see href is equal to google.com. That is an example of an attribute. An attribute is typically provided as a key value pair. The key in this example is href. The value is google.com. Okay. Images also can require multiple pieces of information. Images require the file name typically. So you have src for source, and the source is equal to the image file name or the image path. In this example, we also have the width and the height of the image passed as attributes as well. So you can create HTML elements without writing any attributes, as we saw in the previous slide here. Here's our paragraph. Our paragraph has some content, but it doesn't have any attributes. You could also provide HTML elements which have attributes but no content. And this image is a good example of that. This image is one of those 5% of tags which will not have a closing tag. We don't have a /image on the right, but we do have an image tag with a number of attributes. And finally, you could have both. You could have the A is the anchor element, which has a key value pair, an attribute, and it also has a content. Question in chat, and I love to see questions in chat, so please feel free to ask away. For the image element, the order of the attributes does not matter. And I can say, in general, the order of the attributes does not matter. We could have put width and then source and then height, and it would work just the same, but it would read a little funny to the developer. One note, every time someone pops up in the waiting room, my mouse unfocuses from the presentation and I have to click to refocus, and that causes me to jump to the next slide. So you might notice me jumping to the next slide and jumping back to the previous a few times. I don't know that there's any way around that, but hopefully it won't happen too much. Okay, so when you're creating a web page, typically you would at least have something that says the document type is HTML, and you would have a title tag. You might, if you're familiar with HTML, you might notice one or two other things are missing here. But for a minimalist web page, this is just about all that you would have just to load a web page and see if it's working. So each tag, each element does something different. And we're going to talk about a number of tags today, but because it's displayed here, the title tag is what I'll mention in advance of its slide. The title tag is a tag which displays the content, or I should say the name of the web page in your browser tab. So if you have any web pages open right now, if you look at the browser, let's see if this will work. Okay, it seems like this is working fine. So you can see this tab up here. It has the words DA information session -Google. And when I hover over it, I can see that name pop out of the screen, DA information session -Google slides. That is the page's title, and that information is coming from a title tag. So that means somewhere on the page, we have an opening and closing title tag with the words DA information session -Google. More typically, you would have a bit more information than just the title. You would have your head tag, which includes information that is not the main content, and you would have the body tag, which includes all of the information that displays in the main body of the page. So the main content for the page goes in between the body opening and closing tags. So what does building a page actually look like? You might start with something like this, and I want to be clear, building an HTML page is one of the lowest barrier activities there are. You don't need internet, you just need a browser. Okay, you don't need a great text editor, you don't need a web server, you don't need to know what a web server means. You just need a file which you can name homepage.html, and you then need to open that file in your browser, so Google Chrome. You can right-click the file and press open with Google Chrome. And just by doing that, you will see your web page. So in this slide, we're going to see the most basic of web pages. if I were to type this HTML out, what you see up here, what it would give me in return is a web page with the page title in that little tab for the browser. Okay, so after this presentation, I strongly encourage you to try that out. Take a note right now, a self-note for later. Right, create a page, homepage.html, and fill what you see in right here into that page. And then open it in Google Chrome, and you should see the page title right here. I'm going to show you a couple more commands, and I encourage you to take notes. This is something that you can play with after the presentation as well. Again, this is an excerpt of our 4-day class. In the 4-day class, we would be doing a lot more hands-on, and I would be sending over a lot of images and starter files so that we could code a full design. But I still encourage you to create a page, a basic page, and just try some of the elements out. It's a lot less scary once you're working on it. Okay, so we said the title tag gives you the page name in the browser. The body tag is used to display content to the user, to the visitor of your web page. So all of the visible content on your page in this main content area should be placed within a single body tag. You get one body tag for a web page. So that could be placed right outside of the head tag. The head tag is where you place content which does not render in the main area, and the body tag is where you place content which does render in this main area. So if you were to try out putting a body tag and the word content, you would see the word content appear on your web page. Once we get through a few more tags, I'm going to open up a code-friendly text editor, the Visual Studio Code text editor, and I will write inside of it, I'll write some code and open it in a web page, and we can see all of this working. When I talked about writing semantic HTML, what I'm saying is don't just write everything into the body without any more clarity provided. There are many HTML elements, and each of them comes with some sort of meaning. H1, H2, H3, these are elements which represent various heading levels. So H1 is the primary heading, H2 is the secondary heading, and so on. If you were to recreate a book using HTML and CSS, the H1 would very likely be the title of the book. The H2 might be the name of the chapter. The H3 might be a subsection in the chapter. It could potentially be structured a little differently depending on the type of book. H1 could be the title of the book. H2 could be table of contents. You could have another H2, which is at the same level of the first H2, which is the actual content for the book. And then you could have your H3s divide up the book into chapters. So there's multiple ways to divide your page and still be semantically correct. But your goal is to go for what intuitively makes sense to you and what is the most meaningful way to divide your content, or the most accurate way. So again, H1 is the primary heading, and you can see in this example, we have H1, we put the word primary, we have H2, we put the word secondary, and then we put some content after the H2. So by putting an H1 followed by an H2, the implication is that the H2 is a subsection of the H1. So if H1 is the title of the book, H2 is part of the book. It's maybe the first chapter in the book. And then by putting content after the H2, the implication is that content is part of this section. Following up with another H2, because H2s are both at the same level, we are now saying the last H2 on the page is also a child of the H1, but it is a sibling of the H2, right? It is not nested beneath the other H2. Okay. Now, again, there are many semantic elements. There is one called a section and one called a div. A div is the tag that appears the most on web pages. For the most part, div appears more than any other element on web pages. And div is really the generic container. It doesn't really communicate anything semantically. Okay, so div pretty much means that we are just trying to divide the content one way or another, maybe for styling reasons, maybe for some other reason, but there's just some reason that we are dividing the content up. So when a screen reader sees a div or a search engine sees a div, for the most part they ignore it. It doesn't convey any meaning. And because of that, you need to be careful not to overuse divs. You want to make sure that you're not using divs to lay out your entire web page. If you were to use a div to segment your header and another div to segment your footer and another div to segment the main content area, you have told the screen readers and the search engines really nothing. They have no way of knowing that your header is a header or that the footer is a footer. So use divs when there isn't a more specific element available and when you just need a generic divider. A section tag feels somewhat similar to a div, but it has a bit more meaning to it. A section is used to group related content. So on the Debug Academy website, I might have a section for projects, projects that our students have worked on. And if I have that section on the page somewhere, I might put a section tag around it. And that will tell screen readers everything inside of this element is related to a single topic or a single theme. I might have another section for testimonials. Again, I can put a section tag where the testimonials start and where the testimonials end. And I could call that the what others think about us section, right? And everything inside of those section tags has a shared theme, right? So even if it's not all testimonials, as long as it's all related to the same topic or theme, it would be appropriate to wrap them in a shared section tag. There are a number of tags. We are not going over all of them today, but we are covering a number of them. The span tag is used for grouping inline elements. So for example, if I have words in a sentence and I want to make the first word bold or italics, I could potentially wrap the first word in a span tag. So span tags are basically the div elements for words in a sentence. It's a generic divider. You use the span tag if your goal is to style a specific part of the sentence differently, but it doesn't convey any meaning to screen readers. And a paragraph tag, a P tag, does convey some sort of meaning. It essentially says this is the start of a paragraph. When a paragraph ends and a new paragraph begins, the way a screen reader is reading the content might change. The screen reader might pause at the end of a paragraph, wait a few seconds before starting to read the second paragraph, as opposed to two sentences which follow sequentially without a paragraph delimiter. In that case, it might read the two sentences one after another without taking a noteworthy pause. So you do want to include paragraphs to delimit or to capture each of your paragraphs. Let's see. An example of paragraph tags as well as span tags. You can see here, I'm going to go before and after, I'll go back and forth, but you'll see here the positioning of the words changes. So when I put paragraph tags, by default the browser indents the sentence, and it also gives it some space beneath the paragraph. Okay, now one thing I really like to emphasize is you should not be using elements for the visual effect. So the fact that paragraphs happen to give you some additional spacing is not the reason to use paragraphs. If all I want is some additional spacing, I could use a div, right? A div also doesn't come with any spacing out of the box, to be clear, but my point is we can handle the spacing using a different language, CSS, which we'll talk about a little later. A question I got in the chat is, why would you use a span tag over a strong tag? I would not. So that was not necessarily the best example. There are other elements out there, including the strong tag. If your goal is to make a specific word in your sentence stand out and be, you know, strong, essentially, there is a strong tag which you could use for that purpose. Span might be more appropriate if you have some other change you want to do to a word in a sentence. So if you wanted to change the color for some reason, and strong or italics tags don't make sense, then you could use a span tag. And this is going to be the last one we do before I write some code so you can see some of this in action. When you are creating a web page, more often than not, you will be creating a page that uses a list. In a lot of cases, you don't even realize what you're creating uses a list. So looking at this page, we might not immediately notice any list, and I'm ignoring the content of the slides, just the header. If we just look at the header, it may not be immediately obvious, but most of what you see in the header actually is semantically a list. If I press slide, I am seeing a list of options. So from an HTML perspective, when I create these links, I really should be creating them in a list. Semantically speaking, I should be creating them in a list. Now, it's not only the dropdown, which does kind of look like a list, but it's also actually, this whole row. File, edit, view, insert. All of these links could also be described as a list. This is a list of top-level menu items. Each top-level menu item, when you click it, expands a list of more granular options. Also, right beneath that, we've got a list of buttons. So we have undo, redo, print. These are all actions you can take, but it really is a list from a semantic perspective. The fact that it's a list doesn't mean it displays with bullets or numbers before it. It means the way you would read it is as though it is a list of items. So the implication there is when you create menu links, you really should be using list elements. So the first list element we're talking about is the unordered list. Unordered list essentially indicates that you have a list of items, but the order is not something inherently built into the items. So first UL item, second UL item. By using UL, you are getting a bulleted list. Alternatively, you could use OL. O stands for ordered. If you use OL, then numbers are built in, and then you are communicating something else semantically, right? You're communicating that this is an ordered list and the order of the items matters. In our HTML, you'll notice we have UL opening, UL close. In between it, we have LI. LI stands for list item. So whether or not you're using an unordered list, so whether you're using an unordered list or an ordered list, in either case, you would be placing list items inside. So it's pretty easy to switch between an ordered list and an unordered list. I'm going to try one thing. I want to see if I can keep the captions going with a text editor. Give me 1 minute. And why did the captions disappear? One moment. Okay, the captions disappeared momentarily. While I figure out the code window here, I am going to leave this slide up and pause the screen share. So this gives you a chance to read it while I'm figuring out the code editor. But to give you some context here, I run Debug Academy. Debug Academy is focused on training people in Drupal development and related technologies. And we have some upcoming classes that are likely applicable to you if you are interested in today's session. So we have the HTML CSS ramp up right here, which consists of 4 90-minute classes plus homework, optional homework. And what we're going over today is a small part of that class, a small part of that course. We've also got introductory PHP ramp up. It's also 4 90-minute classes. We have a full day site building class, so just 1 day hands-on. All of these are beginner friendly, And we have the 3-month part-time course if you're looking to really become a Drupal developer. And in that course, we cover quite a bit, including HTML, CSS, PHP, command line, Composer, Git, development environments, and of course, building sites with Drupal. If a lot of those words didn't mean anything to you, that's normal and standard for people who go through that course. But the goal of that course is over 6 hours a week for about 3 months. By investing that time, you can become a Drupal developer. That course has been running for about 5 years now. Okay, so I'm going to pause the screen share, leave the slide up while I get the code ready.
Ashraf, just to let you know, you have 10 more minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. Go. Okay. So with captions off, I'll write updates here periodically. I'm going to demo some of the HTML elements we discussed earlier, and I will also do a little bit of CSS work on the design. To give you context, CSS is a styling language. HTML communicates content and intent. CSS communicates styling, what it should look like. Okay? So this is an HTML document. Notice we have many div elements, which semantically mean nothing. All right, let's create a simple header. By using the header elements, we are telling screen readers and search engines that this content is all part of the header. H1 is the primary heading. I'll write Debug Academy as the website's name here. Also putting it in the title tag so it appears at the top of our browser. Let's create a menu. So here I'm creating a menu. I'm using an unordered list, list items, and nav element, and a link. All right. Let's see what it looks like. So, okay. So, not very pretty, but this is semantically correct. And it's not the job of HTML to make it look good. I'll write a little bit of CSS. And so you can see the process. Okay, so now we see essentially how you write your HTML and then how you write some CSS code to make it look more and more like your original design. We use CSS to move the page name to the left and the menu to the right, also removing the bullets. We can use more CSS to change font colors, background colors, images, etc. With these links, I could say text decoration, none. Make sure that also applies to the links. And I can say color red, just to show you it can be done. I did something to, oh right, these words are breaking it. There you go. So you can see we can modify our displays. I expected to get through more today, but if you're looking to learn a lot more, including CSS, I would encourage you to check out our longer courses, which are coming up next month. There's 2 minutes left, so I think I should probably wrap up here. Nika, is there anything you'd like to say before wrapping it up all the way?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. All right, thank you. I hope this was beneficial to you all. I appreciate you joining me. I'll go ahead and paste the link to our site in case you're interested. And please get in touch. Again, not only do we do training, we also do hands-on development work or project management for your projects. So please feel welcome to get in touch.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thanks, everyone.